So glad you guys are here. If you're new, my name's Caleb, one of the pastors here. I am continuing our series today called It's Giving Wisdom. We are walking through the book of Proverbs, a book that has much power in my life. I started reading a proverb a day when I was 12 years old and did it for an entire decade. My grandfather challenged the church. He said, if you struggle with reading the Bible, you don't read the Bible, start with reading a proverb a day. I was 12 years old and I was challenged by it. And so I started reading one proverb every single day. There's 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, 31 days in most months. And so I started doing that for 10 years of my life. I was imparted wisdom. And so I love this book. I believe it's full of wisdom. And while there's so many little scriptures and quips, we can't walk through the entire book verse by verse. We can pull out some of the major themes. And so today I want to talk to you about your words. The title of my message is Words of Wisdom. I want you to look at your neighbor and say, word. Come on, look at your neighbor. Say, word. And then look at your other neighbor, your second choice, and tell them too. Say, word to you as well. The wisdom in your words. That's what we're talking about today. I want to talk about your tongue. Is that all right? We talk about what comes out of your mouth. Let's look at what Jesus said. Jesus said in Luke 6:45, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. How many of you know what comes out of your mouth is actually in your heart? We've all said things and been like, oh, I'm just playing. I'm just kidding. And then the person may have responded, no, you're not. Like what was in your heart came out of your mouth. The main idea today is this: what you do with your words determines the wisdom of your walk. And so your words matter maybe more than you realize. They have more and carry more weight than you've maybe given them credit for. And so I want to talk to you about your words today. I grew up in Sacramento. Anybody grew up in Sacktown? Come on now. I was born in Sac, born and raised, Vintage Park, what? Okay, like out in South Sac, if you know, you know. But when I turned 18, I went off to college in Missouri. And I called it misery the second I got there. I said, what has happened to me? But guess what? I found my wife there. So can I just tell you something, church? In a season of misery, there is still blessings if you just look for it. Come on. It's a word for somebody today. You're in a season of misery. There may be a blessing coming. Okay, that was a bonus today. But I was in Missouri. I finished my freshman year of college. I come back to Sacramento for the summer. I would work summers here. And I would hang out with all my friends. And when I was young, like some of you, we hung out every night. Y'all remember those days, like socializing every night of the week? That was us. Now I'm old and I'm like, I can barely do one night a week, you know what I'm saying? Let me get my alone time. But back then it was like, let me hang with the crew, with the people every night of the week. And so we were hanging out one night and I had a friend. She was the same age as me. We actually went to high school together. We graduated together. We were hanging out that summer with a group of people, and I said something trying to be funny and making fun of someone in the group, and she stopped and she looked at me. She got really serious. I still remember this to this day. It was 20 plus years ago. And she said, Caleb, why do you feel the need to cut people down with your words? And I was like, excuse me? But it was funny because I went home that night and it penetrated my heart. And I got on my knees that night in prayer and I said, God, am I someone that cuts and tears others down with my words? And the Lord confirmed, yes, you are. And I said, God, why do I do this? And I had to really begin to dig into, why am I like this? Why do I do this? Why? And I took inventory of my own life and I started replaying all my conversations. I realized I was cutting people down. I was making fun of people. I was mocking people. And the Lord began to show me, and I've learned more about it through the years, but we're all motivated by something. Some of you are motivated by morality in this place. My wife is a morality person. Everything is black and white, right and wrong. And if you step out of line, she will call you on it, okay? Don't play with Chrissy, all right? And so she's morality driven. Other people are economically driven. So it's all about money. Like that's what motivates them. That's the main motivator. So anything that helps them economically, financially, that is going to be what motivates them. But then some of us, like me, are motivated by social acceptance. So what I care most about, and I'm still motivated by it to this day, is I want to be liked, even loved. I want to be accepted. And what I realized in that moment on my knees was that when I cut people down and when I make jokes at other people's expenses, the people laugh. And they pat me on the back. Oh, you're so funny. Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, and I entertain the people and I feel this social acceptance in that moment. But I realized I was doing it at the cost of someone else. And so that night at the age of, I was probably 19 at this point, years of age, I said, Lord, I need you to help me with my tongue. I need you to help me with my words. And so I want to show you what the Bible says about this. James chapter 3, before we jump into Proverbs, I got a bunch of Proverbs for you today, okay? But James chapter 3 says this, and the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. Verse 8, but no human being can tame the tongue. You hear me? Do you hear what James said here? No human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. So when I say to you that your tongue is difficult to manage and control, take it to heart. The Bible tells us that no one can tame it. That this may be the most difficult battle you face your entire life, is controlling your words. Controlling what comes out of your mouth, controlling your tongue. This is not a topic we probably talk about enough in the church, but one that today I believe the Lord is going to convict us and challenge us. I hope you leave this place convicted to change how you use your words in this world. So what does Proverbs teach us about our words? I'm going to go through a bunch of Proverbs today, so stick with me. We're going to be jumping around the book of Proverbs. First, it can either be a weapon to wound or words or wisdom to heal. Proverbs 18:21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Did you see that? What comes out of your mouth can either bring death or can bring life. So when I say you have power, I mean it. When I say you have power in your relationships, in your friendships, in your marriage, with your children, at your job, you have more power than you realize. Because death and life are in the power of the tongue, Proverbs tells us. Proverbs 12:18 says, there is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. What do I want my words to be? Do I want it to be a weapon to wound? Or do I want to use my tongue to be words to heal? Wisdom to heal. What do I want my tongue to be? I think we all would agree, like, I want to heal. I want it to be wisdom to heal, not a word, a weapon to wield and to hurt and to wound. And yet, this is the most difficult thing we do. To tame this small thing. James says it's like a rudder on a ship. Though small, it determines the whole course of the direction of where the ship goes. That's your tongue. That's your words. You know, it's interesting. I think sarcasm is a common challenge that we have in today's culture. We are a very sarcastic people. Where are my sarcastic people at? Come on, just be honest. I'm going to call you all out right now. Here we go. Let's do this. I'm going to raise my hand because I got sarcasm in me too. I heard somebody say this recently. They said, it's okay if you don't like me. Not everyone has good taste. That's sarcasm, if you're wondering. It's funny, isn't it? But you know what sarcasm does, or what it does to us? It creates a chasm between us and others. Why? Because it is hostility disguised as humor. There is a hostility in our heart, a hostility in our spirit. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's why it normally doesn't feel good when we spend time with someone who's constantly sarcastic and who always brings sarcasm into the conversation. It changes the flavor of the conversation, and suddenly it becomes not sweet but bitter. And so I have to challenge us, because I raised my hand. I have to challenge us that we would monitor and manage and keep an eye on our sarcasm, because the last thing we want is bitterness flowing out of us. I don't want the conversations I have with people when they walk away, the taste that they have, the aftertaste is one of bitterness. I want it to be something sweet. I don't want my words to be wounds in people's lives. I want my words to be wisdom in people's lives. So what are you going to do with your words? Are they going to be a weapon to wound, or wisdom, words to heal? Second thing Proverbs shows us is that we can create conflict or cultivate confidence with our words. Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. I told this story a few years back, but I was driving one day on the freeway, and it was one of those moments where there's tons of traffic and everyone has to merge into one lane. And we're getting closer and closer, and I'm merging in, and it was very tight quarters with all these cars trying to merge into one lane, and I'm coming up and another guy's coming up, and we just keep getting closer and closer and closer and closer, and neither of us is backing down. And I'm not backing down, and he's not backing down. I'm not looking at him, and he's not looking at me, and I'm just... And then our cars were almost touching, and I turned and I looked at him. And he turned and he looked at me. And we were both dead serious. And as I'm looking at him with seriousness, fire in my eyes, I don't know what it was, but I started laughing. I was like this, and I went, and I said, you go. And then he started laughing. And he said, no, you go. And I was like, no, you. And he's like, no, you, no, you. We had a moment, church. You go, you go. And he's like, okay, I'll go. And I'm like, all right, go. Much love. I don't know why that's so seared in my memory, this experience on a freeway, but I think it's because most of what we experience is rage and anger. And while I didn't say anything other than you go, there was a softness to that interaction simply by a laugh, by a joy in my face and my eyes. A harsh word, though, will stir up anger. What if I had turned and said something different? What if I had turned and motioned something different? What would have been stirred up in him in that moment? Proverbs 10:18 says, whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool. You see, there are those who would fall into the idea of slander or gossip. Watch this, Proverbs 11:13. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. This is what I'm talking about. We have conflict in our lives, and it's created by our lack of confidence, of keeping a confidence. I have a friend in my life, and we know, this group of friends I'm in, we know that if we tell him anything, everyone will know. And so the guys, the other buddies of mine will text me and say, hey, I gotta tell you something, but make sure you don't tell him. Because if he knows, everyone knows. And I don't want everyone to know. I don't want that reputation. I don't think you want that reputation, but you probably have someone like that in your life. You see, this is what I'm talking about. And when you can't be trusted in confidence, it creates unhealthy conflict in your life, and unnecessary conflict. Proverbs 16:28 says, a perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. You see, what I speak eventually flows into what I do and thus who I am. So often, we go back to what our moms used to tell us. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words, they'll never hurt me. How many know how false that is? It's a great quip and saying, but the reality is words wound more than anything, maybe. Words stir up conflict and dissension more than anything. And so some of you are like, well, don't judge me by what I say. Judge me by what I do. Don't you see what you say flows into what you do? Jesus said, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. That is who you are. What comes out of your mouth. And it's why we must manage our words with wisdom. The third thing we see from Proverbs about our words is that, and I may trigger some people with this one, silence isn't violence. Oh, Caleb, what do you mean? This was really popular a few years back. It's been very popular the last few years. I heard this said a ton. Silence is violence. Advocate for those that can't advocate for themselves. Speak up for those that can't speak up for themselves. Now, I believe some of that. But Proverbs says something different about being silent. Don't shoot the messenger. Proverbs 21:23 says, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Proverbs 17:28 says, even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. You see, I've got a problem. I do this for a living. Kind of. This is my call, but it's also my job. And when you talk for a living, you tend to talk too much at times in your life. My wife will tell you, she's always on me, Caleb, you're a yapper. You're always yapping, talking. Sometimes I talk just to talk. I say things just to shock without really thinking about what I'm saying. And then I'm reminded of what Proverbs talks about holding your tongue, about being silent, about the wisdom of not always speaking on everything. And we're in this outrage culture where you're supposed to be outraged about everything. And so everything that happens in culture, in the news, you're supposed to speak out on it. But here's the problem with that, is sometimes you're not educated in it. Sometimes you don't understand the context of it. Sometimes you haven't researched it enough. Sometimes you don't even know what you think or where you stand on it, but everyone else is posting about it, so I better say something. But Proverbs says it's okay to be silent. And so I just wanted to encourage somebody in this place that feels like they got to speak out on everything. Now listen, if God puts it on your heart to speak out, if there's an injustice and you're burdened by it and you've done your research and you understand what's going on in it, then speak out. But in a culture of always sharing and oversharing and sharing everything about your life, every little detail of what you did on every single day, sometimes silence is the best choice. What if we learn to just listen more and speak less? Sometimes silence is wisdom, church. This morning, my wife, we were getting ready. Sunday mornings, we're always getting ready in the bathroom at the same time, you know. We come together on Sunday mornings and come to the church together, and we're getting ready, and she decides to ask me a really intense question. She comes at me. I'm not going to bring up the topic, but she comes at me with this question, and I don't respond. I'm just silent. She asks me again, and I don't respond again. She asks me a third time, and I say nothing still. She says, Caleb, do you feel attacked right now? And I said, I don't know what I'm feeling. But I still need to process my emotions in this, so I don't think I should respond in this moment. Now, standing here up here, I did feel attacked, church. I processed it since. I felt attacked by my wife. But I felt like in the moment, the best choice was silence because I was still wrestling with the emotion of her challenging me. Also knowing I was about to come preach on words and on silence. And the conflict was unnecessary in that moment. And so after I said, I don't know what I'm feeling, I said, how about we talk about this afternoon? She said, that sounds good. She was in the first service. I brought this up, and she was like, it's good. We can talk this afternoon, Caleb. You see, sometimes silence is wisdom. And if I had responded in the moment, it could have escalated to something because I knew I was in my feelings about what she was saying to me. I did feel attacked about because I felt like it was directed at me. And she was like, oh, I'm just talking about her family as a whole. No, you're calling me out, woman. I know what you're doing. Get behind me, Satan. I'm trying to preach this morning and stay pure. So I chose silence. But listen, man, I got to call you out because I think some of you may even use this as a weapon with your wife when you get home. See, Caleb said, you got to talk about it. No, you need to talk about it. I just talked about conflict. We always say conflict is the price we pay for a deepening level of intimacy. Conflict is good if we can have healthy conflict resolution. And you cannot have healthy conflict resolution in marriage unless you talk about it. But you don't got to talk about it right then, especially if you're still processing. So that's what I say to my wife often. I need a little time to process this. My wife and I have been wrestling with this recently even because she wants to talk about all her emotions with me, all her feelings with me. And I don't have the capacity to manage that many emotions, church. Come on, let me just be real with you. Y'all women be feeling a lot. Or at least my wife does. I'm not calling y'all out. And you know what's interesting is recently she came to me, somebody said, preach, yeah. If you're sitting next to your wife, you can deal with that later, all right? But it's interesting because recently my wife came to me, she said, God gave me some revelation this week. I said, oh, really? Do tell. She said, I realized that I had gotten in the habit of feeling like I had to process every emotion with you. And I would often bring it to you before I brought it to God. And she said, I'm going to do better at bringing it to God before I bring everything to you. You see, because sometimes we want people to be the ones that help us to healthily process the hurt, the pain, the past. But are we going to God with it first? So when I say silence isn't violence, I'm even talking about you and how you bring things to people. Are you going to your therapist before you go to God? Are you going to your spouse before you go to God? Are you going to that friend? Oh, but I can trust them. They're a stalwart in the faith. Have you brought it to God first? You see, when it comes to him, he already knows our thoughts and our heart and our mind, but I think so often we're talking to so many people. And God's like, bring it to me first. The fourth thing we see here in Proverbs about our words is that there is failure in flattery. This isn't a topic that I've really preached on, I don't know about ever. And I don't think it's a topic we talk about much in the church in general. But Proverbs talks a lot about flattery. And so I want to challenge you with this, and some of you this may not really apply, but I think maybe more of us it does than we realize if we really listen. You see, Proverbs 26:28 tells us, and these are a few different versions, a lying tongue hates those who are crushed by it, and a flattering mouth works ruin. Proverbs 28:23, whoever rebukes a person will in the end gain favor rather than the one who has a flattering tongue. Proverbs 29:5, a man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his own feet. So what is flattery? Well, flattery is actually speaking something that we would say, is encouraging or edifying or building up, but we're doing it under false pretenses with falsity attached to it. I don't know if I should tell you this, but when I was early on in this church, we started this church 11 years ago, and we had a staff member who would come to me, and every meeting would just flatter me. And flattery feels good at first. I mean, he was gassing me up, church. My number one hype beast. Bro's gassing me, hyping me. But it was interesting because at the end of every conversation, there would always be something that he wanted. An angle that then he would take it to something that would benefit him. And before I knew it, the flattery that early on gassed me up and encouraged me, later on, it was disgusting to me because I knew that it always came with a caveat attached, with a request soon to be made, with a level of manipulation that was involved in it. And I began to be disgusted anytime he spoke any word of encouragement over me, even if it wasn't flattery. You see, what we do with flattery is we deceive. We give people a false sense of who they are because often we say things we don't even believe about them. It's manipulation. Why? It's covert form of aggression used to influence, corrupt, or even undermine the person that we're talking to. It's exploitation, taking advantage of the naive and impressionable people around us. And then it is selfish in that the gain is ultimately for ourselves to help ourselves achieve our own goals. So what did Proverbs say here? It said in 28:23, whoever rebukes a person will in the end gain favor rather than the one who has a flattering tongue. You see, I can go back to that girl when I was 19 years old. And she called me out. You know, now she's a pastor's wife. It wasn't my wife. It was a friend of mine who now is married to another pastor I know. I believe God blessed her because she did something, not just because of that, her whole life, but I needed a rebuke. I didn't need to be flattered in that moment. And that rebuke that she gave to me, I believe, was part of the favor that God brought on my life and on hers. And so how often do we flatter when we should be rebuking? I'm not saying you go around rebuking everyone, but I'm saying you use wisdom in the words that are coming out of your mouth. You see, the final thing that we learn from Proverbs and that it teaches us about our words is that we can either be fruitful trees or broken branches. Proverbs 15:4, if the keys would come back. A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. Can I talk to you about perverseness in this generation? The perverseness in our words and in our language. We are perverse, church, because we are in a perverse generation. We're inundated with perverseness. Perverseness on Instagram, perverseness in commercials, perverseness in television shows and movies. We're soaking in and taking in with our eyes and our ears and our minds perversity. And then what flows out of us is perversity. What do you mean, Caleb? It's funny to me how often we can turn everything into a sexual innuendo, into something inappropriate. It'll even happen up here. I'll say something. It had no sexual connotation at all, and I'll see some of you giggling. Immature. Now, me and my wife, right? I think there's something special about a husband and wife joking about something sexual in nature. That's between a husband and a wife. But I'm bothered by how in today's culture, there's this proliferation of perversity in every conversation. Let me show you. So you heard of this? The younger people will know what I'm talking about. But I got some friends that do this. So you'll say something, and then the person will say, pause. Now, if you don't know what this means, it's like if I said a phrase, and they thought it was sexual in nature or inappropriate in nature, they'll say, pause, pause. So for instance, I was talking with a couple friends the other day. We were talking football. Few buddies together, and they were talking about the running back, and they were struggling to run the ball, and he said, man, they just need to pound it up the middle. And one of the guys goes, pause. And everybody laughed. And I was like, bro, what? How else are you supposed to say that? We're talking about football here. You see, here's my problem, is that as Christians, our minds should not always go to what is perverse. As Christians, our minds should not always go to something that is sexual in nature or some level of sexual connotation. And I got a problem with Christians whose minds are full of perversity, and I want to challenge you with it. How do you fix that? Because you're like, Caleb, you don't understand. This is just how I think. My mind does it. I can't control it. You want to know how you fix it? You don't say it. Because you may think it, but when you speak it, it reinforces what was in your mind. But if you hold your tongue, hold on, I'm preaching at somebody. If you hold your tongue, you do not solidify the inappropriate, perverse thought that was in your mind, and before you know it, the next time, it's not even there. But if you speak it, you reinforce it, and then it'll continue to come out. So here's my challenge. A perverse generation, we're surrounded by perversity, that you would fight the temptation to proliferate that as a follower of Christ. That's what this tells us. It's looking for a gentle tree of life, not perverseness in it that will break the spirit. Death and life, Proverbs 18:21 tells us, are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Do you know you have the ability to speak life or death? So can I just talk to the married people in the room and the parents in the room? Single people, you're engaged, you're dating, you're single, you need to listen for your future. But I just felt like today the Lord was like, you need to talk to the parents right now. You need to talk to those with little kids and middle-aged kids and junior high kids and high school kids. How do you speak to your children? What's coming out of your mouth towards them? See, I got 3 kids. My son turned 13 yesterday. God help us. I have an 11-year-old son, have a 9-year-old daughter. Now listen, you know what I realized and none of my kids are in here, so I'm gonna talk about this for a moment. What I realized is certain of my kids I have an easier time connecting with, naturally. My 9-year-old is my daughter. I'm a girl dad. She's my princess. She loves daddy. I have no problem hugging her and kissing her and affirming her and encouraging her. And I mean, she runs our house. Whatever she says, yes. Yes, Charlie. It's easy to connect with her. My 13-year-old, he's like little mini me, wants to be me, follows me everywhere I go. Always asking me questions. Dad, 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 dad. Always wants to ride with me. Easy to connect with him. But then I have an 11-year-old who's different than the other 2. And he's not like me. And I've always had a harder time connecting with him. And so I had to decide this last year, like, am I gonna let this continue in his life, that I connect easy with my 13-year-old, I connect easy with my 9-year-old, but my 11-year-old, that middle child that does his own thing and doesn't necessarily want to be with dad all the time. I said no. So I started taking him out one-on-one every month. And I sit down with him and I ask him about his day. I ask him about what he's excited about. I ask him about his life. But then you know what I do? Every time I speak words of encouragement over him. And so the last time I was with him, I said, hey, Kai, I want you to know, I love how unique you are. I don't want you to be like Canaan. I don't want you to be like Charlie. I want you to be what only Kai can be. And can I tell you what I love about you? And he was like, yeah, Dad, tell me. And I went through the list. I love your creativity. I love your energy. He gets corrected a lot for how much energy he has. But I said, I love your energy. God's gonna use that energy one day. And I just began to speak all these words. And I asked him at the end of it, I said, how does that make you feel, hearing all that from me? He said, Dad, that makes me feel so good. I feel like you see me, Dad. I said, I do. And I see you uniquely as you. Parents, are you speaking words of criticism or encouragement? Are you speaking shame or healthy correction? Are you speaking words of failure or words of potential? Can we normalize these words? And this is even in our marriage too. What if we normalize, you can do it? That was a good choice. I believe in you. You are amazing. I saw that brave thing you did. It's okay to be sad. Everyone makes mistakes. You're just at the starting line of learning this. You are kind and thankful. I'm proud of you and I love you. What if these were the normal words that flowed out of us? You see, some of you wouldn't have had to go through all the therapy you've had to go to if your parents had spoken those words. But some of us need to determine in our life right now, I maybe didn't get that, but my children will get it. I didn't maybe receive that, but I will break the cycles of dysfunction of my home, and my children will receive something different. I'll use my tongue to build up, not wound. I'll use my tongue to bless, not curse. Today, I just want to encourage us, what we do with our words matters. You see, Jesus gives us some sobering words about our words, and I want to close with this. Here's what he says in Matthew 12. I need you all to listen to this. He says, but I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. I needed to solidify with the words of Jesus just how serious what you do with your words is. Your words matter. They carry life or they carry death. James said, as I showed you at the beginning, the tongue is a fire that no man can control. So hear me in this. This is the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's the hardest thing that I battle every single day as a Yapper church. I battle it every day. And yet, in this is a call to use my words in a way that Proverbs tells me, and Jesus tells me, and the Word of God tells me, builds up, brings life, edifies, and speaks into people. It's your greatest battle. And I wanted to tell you, you can't do it in your strength, but the good thing is you don't have to. Can I encourage you today? You don't have to. You see, Jesus, I love what he said on the cross. He said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. You see, that rings true for us today. So often we sin and our words wound and our words hurt and we tear people down and we curse instead of bless. And yet Jesus' grace covers it. He came to take the wounding of your words onto himself. He came to take the sin of your words onto himself. And his grace is sufficient for you, for his power is made perfect in your weakness. So hear me today. Some of you have hurt and wounded and cursed and torn down, and Jesus wanted to tell you, I can cover all that. So receive the grace today. But the second thing is this, what this message was all about. I don't want to keep using my words the same way. I don't want to use my words to hurt and wound and tear down like I did last year this next year. No, I'm changing how I'm using what God has given me, this tongue, this fire. And yet with God's strength, I believe you can use it in a way that blesses, builds up, and edifies, and changes dysfunction that's gone on for generations. You can be the agent of change for that in your life, in your family, and in your future. So with heads bowed across this room, you're here, you say, Caleb, honestly, I don't even know Jesus. I've been running from Jesus. I've been walking in sin. I've been caught up in all kinds of junk. And I tried to do it in my strength, my way, according to what I thought was right. But today I'm ready to receive Jesus, to surrender to Jesus, to ask Jesus to come into my life, to forgive me of my sins, to change me, to make me new. Jesus died for you. On your worst day, he died for you. On your best day, he died for you. So if that's you, you're in this room, you say, Caleb, I got to give my life to Jesus for the first time. I need to recommit my life to Jesus anew and afresh. Would you lift your hand right now? Just shoot it up real quick so I can see it. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, I see those hands. Thank you. You can put them down. Second thing in here, you say, Caleb, honestly, I got to do better with my words. I've wounded, I've cursed. I want to build up. I want to build up my spouse. I want to build up my kids. I want to build up my friends. I want to build up my coworkers. I want to build up my boss. I need to do better with my words, and I need Jesus' strength today to do it. Would you lift your hands if the Lord spoke to you and convicted you today in this place about that? Yeah, hands going up all around the room. You can put them down. Would you repeat this after me? Say, Jesus, today I confess my sin and my need for a Savior. Forgive me, change me, make me new. I need you to transform me, my mind, my words, my soul, my spirit. I love you, Jesus. Give me the strength to serve you and follow you and honor you with everything that comes out of my life. In your name. Amen, amen. Come on, let's stand to our feet, church. Can we do something before we go? Would you sing this one last time? Give God some praise for what he did in our hearts today in this room. Come on, sing Jesus, we love you.